Hey everybody, welcome back to the Labs Comic Fan. I'm Steve, and today I'm talking Batman, Court of Owls. So something that kind of sucks, our Dark Knight Returns drawing, the guy who won the drawing never got back to me. So we're going to be doing a redraw. But also, you're not just going to win this Dark Knight Returns box set. You're also going to win this awesome 100 Greatest Batman Moments book. It's really nice, hardbound book. Really, really cool. So you win both prizes. All you have to do is be subscribed to the Pop Culture Project, and you're going to comment on this video for the Batman Court of Owls what your favorite Batman story is, storyline. It could be a movie, it could be any of the animated features, it could be a comic run, it could be whatever.
Come, Batman. Let's see if you can cut the mustard. Quiet.
You just comment there and you will be automatically entered. I'm thinking we'll give it to the end of January, and I'll make an update video, and then we'll see how many submissions we get by then, and we'll do it randomly like we did before with the randomizer, and I'll do a live YouTube stream, and we'll pick the winner. Batman, Court of Owls, man. This is Volume 1 from the New 52 run. Writer Scott Snyder, artist Greg Capullo. There's a couple other artists, but I think the Volume 1 here for the actual Court of Owls, I believe it's all Greg Capullo on art. This is amazing, guys. I've never read this before. I've never read it. I've seen videos on it. I've seen other people do their reviews on it. I've seen, I can't remember if it was like Batman Bad Blood or Batman and Son or something like that. One of those adaptations that loosely adapted this. It's way better than the animated one, obviously. I always like whenever the animated features stick right to the actual comic book. But this is amazing, guys. I loved it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but I thought it was great. I really, really thought that the writing in it was solid. For Batman, I guess the New 52, it's a reboot, and when they started, I guess you were supposed to know that superheroes were only around for about 5 years. So being one of Batman's first stories in this, like first major events, I thought it was a home run. I thought it was fantastic. So the book starts off with Batman fighting a lot of his rogues gallery as a narration about Gotham is told in the background. Just when he seems to be getting overwhelmed, an unlikely partner comes from the shadows. It's the Joker. So yeah, I saw this and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. It starts off, I mean, there's Mr. Freeze, Professor Pig, Two-Face, the Killer Croc, there's Scarecrow, Riddler, Zaz. I was like, there's a ton of people. I was like, what in the hell is going on? I love when he kicks through Clayface. You can see at the bottom of his boot, there's a bat symbol, like he's got bat-branded boots. And then popping up right behind Batman is the face, and I'm like, no way. No. And it's the Joker, and you're like, What? Like, I've seen Batman work with some of his rogues gallery before, but the Joker, I was like, whoa, this is going crazy. I didn't quite get what was happening right there. So they cut to the Batcave, and the Joker's there, and my mind is just totally warped at this point, but it's actually a fake out. It's Dick Grayson in an EMP mask, whatever that means. I guess electromagnetic pulse mask. I don't know. But it was like all these little points and triangles. It looked almost like motion capture for video games. But it was Dick Grayson, and it was cool. I liked it. So him and Dick are getting ready. They have a dinner party to go to where they meet up with all the other Bat guys, the other Bat family, but not Batgirl. Bruce is giving a presentation about a Gotham restoration project, and this is where Bruce meets mayoral candidate Lincoln March. They talk about each of their own ventures when Bruce needs to excuse himself after reading Gordon's lips about a crime. Bruce sets up a meeting with March for the next day before leaving. So I guess Bruce is given like this presentation about fixing up certain parts of Gotham, and they have this whole like 3D map, and it's like he's fixing it all up, I'm guessing, to beautify Gotham, because that's the weird thing about Batman. He always talks about how much they love Gotham, and the people there do too. They hate it, but they also love it. It's like they feel like they get something from the city. It hardens them, it teaches them and stuff, and he wants to fix it up. Batman meets up with Harvey Bullock at the crime scene, and there's a man up against the wall with tons of knives in him, and the knives have an owl marking on them, and this is the first time the Court of Owls is brought up. There's this dude, and he's pretty much up against the wall. He's covered in blood, and he's got knives all over him, and Batman pulls one out, or they take one out, and at the edge of the knife, there's an owl symbol. And this is the first time that the Court of Owls is brought up. Batman smells some paint thinner behind a canvas on the wall and uses Bullock's cigar to light it. A message of fire says, Bruce Wayne will die tomorrow. Right from the gate, man, they seem to be targeting Bruce, and the Lincoln March guy. I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all.
It's a trap!
But it's interesting to see that Bruce Wayne is being targeted. And my thoughts went to, well, maybe it had something to do with his Gotham beautification project, or, that whatever that was. There's a subplot with Dick Grayson. During the crime scene, Batman finds some DNA under the guy's fingernails, and it happens to match Dick's DNA. And we'll talk more about that in part 2. This is going to be 2 parts, by the way, guys. I'm going to do part 1 tonight, which will be like the first 3 or 4 chapters, and then the next part. This is a 7-chapter story. I will do the next part probably sometime over the weekend, or maybe next week. I haven't figured that out yet, but we're going to do 2 parts for this, because I want to review like the whole thing. I want to talk a lot about it. Commissioner Gordon is at the morgue, and Batman has something hooked up to the cameras and uses 3D imaging to see what Gordon sees. Batman finds another owl symbol, but this time it's on the man's wisdom tooth. Batman tells Gordon it's an Athenian owl, and this is where we get the Court of Owls rhyme. Gordon recites. Okay, so I guess when you live in Gotham, there's always been this like nursery rhyme or little kids rhyme. People know about the Court of Owls, but they don't know if it exists. And while doing this autopsy, kind of, Batman's looking through, and he has this like holographic projection system, and he finds another owl on the guy's molar, his wisdom tooth. And that's another clue, because they found one on the throwing knife. That was one of them that was stuck in the guy, the many that were in him. And so this is where we get the nursery rhyme for the first time. Beware the Court of Owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whispered word of them, or they'll send a Talon for your head. That's insane. Like the fact that there's this big of a like lore behind this, and they kind of seem to be playing that Batman doesn't think that there is a Court of Owls, and they kind of elaborate more later. But it's like, you got owl markings on stuff. You got this nursery rhyme. You're supposed to be the world's greatest detective. Batman insists they don't exist. Gordon says the DNA below the man's fingernails turned up nothing. Batman lies and says he has nothing either. There's a knock on Batman's door, and it's Dick. Batman questions him why his DNA would be under this man's nails, and Dick recognizes the man and tells him it was a week ago at the groundbreaking on Bruce's West Side Promenade. And when he was leaving, a crazed man grabbed his arm and started saying crazy stuff like, "They're real, they're everywhere, and they're sending them for you, all of you." So that's like what I was saying. There was this subplot about Dick Grayson, and it's like, why would his DNA be under the guy's fingernails? Obviously, there was an explanation for it. Dick recognizes the guy and says, this is what happened. Batman had already checked the security footage, so he knows Dick was telling the truth. I think he was just trying to see if Dick was telling the truth, because there you start playing on the psychosis of Batman. He's in such denial that anything like this could be going on under his nose, because this is his city. This is Batman's city. They cut to the next day, and Bruce is meeting up with Lincoln March, and they talk. Lincoln wants Bruce's vote, and they jab at each other a little bit. Lincoln tells Bruce that he lost his parents too. It was a car accident, and he can barely remember his mother's face, but he does remember a pin he made for her. In Bruce, he sees an ally, and allies are hard to come by in this city, especially now. Bruce asks why now, Lincoln. He starts to tell Bruce something bad has come back to Gotham, something evil. When out of nowhere, they're attacked by someone dressed in all black. It's the Talon. So this guy right here is like the long arm of the law for the Court of Owls. We know that, but he doesn't, and he is wondering what the hell's going on. Because as he's fighting this guy, he's like, whoa, this guy's good. This dude's really, really good, because he's going for vital parts of Bruce. Lincoln is stabbed, and Bruce fights back, but says to himself he has to make it look lucky because you never know who's watching. Bruce gets him into a chokehold, but nothing is happening. Then the Talon says, Bruce Wayne, the Court of Owls has sentenced you to die. And then he kicks Bruce out of a window. So when I first was reading this, I was just like, what the hell? Because they had showed a panel before where Bruce was falling out of a window, but then it kept cutting back to different time periods. And I was just like, so wait a minute, what is happening? And when you finally see him get kicked out of the window, you're just like, what are you going to do, Bruce? What you going to do?
And what you gonna do?
When the Talon comes for you, brother.
While Bruce is falling, he's trying to figure out how to save himself when the Talon says, how I love killing Waynes. My first thought right there when he said that was, does this have anything to do with Bruce's parents' murder? Are they retconning the Joe Chill storyline and replacing it with this Court of Owls that seems to be working underneath of his nose, like behind, even Batman's working behind the scenes. These people are working behind the scenes.
So we killed the bat. That's right. Yes.
Bruce is following, and he remembers the gargoyles. There's one that's in the middle of the building, and that's the one he lands on. The Talon falls to the ground, crashing through a car. In the ambulance on the way to the morgue, the Talon wakes up and kills everyone in the ambulance and makes a getaway. So I see this, and he does. Bruce lands on this gargoyle that they do talk about later. There's this thing with 13th floors that we'll get into a little bit later. But he lands on the gargoyle, and he's got knives in different sections. Because he had said if he tried to grab the earlier ones with the wounds he had, it would have pulled his arms right out of the socket. This would have happened, that would have happened. The guy got him exactly where he needed to be gotten. And you see the Talon just, bam, crash right into the car. And then he gets up afterwards when he's in the ambulance and just kills the people. And you're like, wait, what?
I'm not dead.
Is this a robot? What is this? Like, what is happening here? So then we cut to something really weird and out of place, but it does give you context for something. So it cuts to Alan Wayne. It's Bruce's great-grandfather, and he seems to have, it looks like he escaped from a hospital or something. He's wearing some sort of gown, and he's running around crazy, and he's found by the police. And he's saying, they're real. They're out to get me. It's the 13th hour. All this crazy stuff. And one of the policemen is like, should we just get the paddy wagon? He's like, no, dude. This is Alan Wayne. Like, he's made this city. He built a lot of these buildings. We can't have him go out like that. When they turn around, they're like, Mr. Wayne? Alan Wayne fell into a manhole, into the sewer, and apparently drowned. So that's the story. That's why I said it was out of place. You're just like, what the hell just happened? Batman visits Luca Volk for info on the Talon, because he's part of a gang that controls smuggling and parts of the rail line, which Bruce thinks is how the Talon got into the old Wayne Tower undetected. He fights off some henchmen, and Volk doesn't know anything. So Bruce goes down there and he starts interrogating this guy. And the guy makes like this really shitty joke because Bruce is asking, he's talking about a masked man who's dressed up like an owl. But the guy makes a joke basically saying, I know a masked guy who's going to be in the hospital or dead soon, something to that effect, while all of his guys are creeping up on Batman. And Batman just beats the shit out of all of them and gets the guy up, and he's questioning him. but he sees in his mask from his heart rate and his pulse and all this stuff that the guy is telling the truth. He was not lying. He doesn't know anything about an owl man or the Talon. Back at the Batcave, Bruce talks to Alfred about everything and wants to find out who this Talon is because he's not convinced that the court is real. He thinks someone wants to make him believe they're real and been operating under his nose the whole time. Alfred talks about Alan Wayne and his obsession with bad luck, the number 13, and how he died drowning after falling into the open manhole cover. So I really like how they have this relationship. They usually do this a lot in Batman stories, his relationship with Alfred, where he can be vulnerable around Alfred. He can tell him exactly what he's thinking. And he's like, listen, Master Bruce, your great-grandfather was obsessed with this type of stuff. And, you sometimes when you get obsessed, you don't necessarily see what's right in front of you. And because Bruce is not convinced, he's just in such denial about there being a court of owls. Bruce visits Lincoln in the hospital to ask him about what he was saying right before they were attacked. Lincoln tells him that he had been getting threats to stop his bid running for mayor, and once he woke up to find an owl perched in his closet with a little pile of bones beneath it. Lincoln recites the rhyme, and Bruce is in denial, saying he would have heard about them with his roots in the city. Lincoln says unless they didn't want you to know about them until now, maybe it's this restoration initiative Bruce is planning, reshaping the city. Bruce isn't afraid of ghosts, but Lincoln warns him that sometimes you're too concerned with the little dangers, you don't see the big ones right beneath your feet. So they hark back right to kind of what Alfred was alluding to. And Lincoln, I don't know, there was something about him that I didn't trust. I just didn't trust. And then I was like, well, the dude got stabbed. He's in the hospital, all this stuff. This is, not looking so good. And he's like really trying to get on Bruce's good side. But he does make a point. If this court thinks that the city is theirs and they've been running this for however long, we don't know yet, that would show Bruce having a lot of power by restoring parts of the city and getting the people behind him, and Lincoln March running for mayor. And if Bruce endorses him, that's a lot of power that they have combined there. So getting Bruce out of the picture is a very good option for this type of group. Batman goes back to the old Wayne Tower built by his grandfather and talks about superstition and how he would skip the 13th floor of all the buildings when constructing them. So what's cool is like the narration is talking while Batman is going back to that gargoyle that he landed on. And he's talking about how when his great-grandfather had made these buildings, because he was so superstitious, he skipped the floor 13. He would just have it as an open chasm or whatever and just go to 14. So Bruce is like, let's see what's going on here. Let's see if something like this, could there be any clues in this old Wayne Tower? Maybe that's how the Talon got in. And the reason why Bruce is thinking that is the narration is saying that owls don't make their own nests. They actually go to the nests of other birds, take them over, and then build their home in those nests. And that's exactly what happened. It was really freaking cool how Scott Snyder is using the narration and the conversations to play into each other perfectly. It's literally like a piece of a puzzle. It's like, boom, here's this, boom, here's that, there's that, there's that. And it's all fitting together in this beautifully crafted story, guys. He finds a hideout with a suit of Talon armor and a picture dated June 1891 with a bunch of people with owl masks on. He finds this really crazy looking lair. It's got like a Talon suit of armor over here. It's got a big giant coin that has an owl on it. It reminded me of Batman's big penny. And there's a picture dated June of 1891, and there's a bunch of people with these owl masks on. It's really spooky. Some of this is, if I could say this, if I was young when I read this, I could see this being very thrilling and scary. Like, it not scary in the sense of, oh my God, I feel so scared, but like making your arm hair stand up, giving you, Like, ugh.
Well, you certainly gave that boy the heebie-jeebies.
Bruce contacts Alfred and asks him to find out if the Alan Wayne Foundation for Young Architects still exists and get addresses for every building built with funding from the foundation over the past half a century. Alfred gets back to him. There are almost 20 of them, and the most recent one was made 5 years ago. He then instructs Alfred to dig up Alan Wayne's crypt because he was right the whole time about the owl's nests. They're in our home. That was, man, I was like, ooh, this is sick. I was so, like, I'm thinking now, after he had that conversation with him, I'm thinking, like, oh, man, could they know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? Could, that the Talon said, oh, how I love killing Waynes. There's the whole thing about his great-grandfather. They've obviously been there for a fuck of a long time. And they have to know. If they were operating this long under Bruce's nose and he didn't even know, it would be hard for me to believe that when he started being Batman, not the Batman we know now that's really careful about things, but Batman starting out, if they were already existing, there's a good chance that they know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. So Batman's getting ready to leave and he trips a tripwire. And this big explosion happens. And you see him get out of the side of the building through this hole. And while he's doing that, there's a Talon on another building watching him. But what is amazing is in the panels, while he's in the building, you see an eye from the Talon's mask up here. And it's like you see a building and down here also. So you're seeing it as like the eyes of the Talon are always watching you. And everything ties together in this book. I love this, man. This Scott Snyder is freaking amazing. Dick goes to the Batcave and Bruce is running tests on Alan Wayne's bones. Dick says he talked to Gordon and they think Bruce is being too skeptical about the existence of the court. And he's worried because Bruce has almost been killed twice in a week. Bruce tells Dick there's no court of owls. He knows. Apparently Bruce was having a very hard time as a boy, coping with the death of his parents, and he thought the court could be involved. So he did his first detective case and followed every lead everywhere, looking into Gotham elites, even his parents' friends. No one could be ruled out. He found a building called the Harbor House. All the families he suspected were members at one point or another. He got the schematics for the building and found a windowless room that looked like a meeting place. So he went there, and what he found was nothing. No villain, no answers, just dust. He was so shocked he didn't even notice the door locked behind him. He was up there for a week, and when Alfred finally found him, he was comatose. It's really hard when you read this part of it because we as the reader, we know, because the story's called Court of Owls, that there most likely is a Court of Owls. But it's you're getting emotionally invested into Batman being in this denial. And when he said, I like how I like killing Waynes, and our brain instantly went to Thomas and Martha Wayne, we see that that's what, Batman thought a long time ago, because hearing that nursery rhyme as a kid and stuff like that, your brain goes to that direction. And he wanted there to be true, and he did all this detective work, and he had found the place called the Harbor House, and it even had this insignia of these owls and all of these families. I mean, he looked into everybody, all the elites, even his parents' friends, because his dad, not only being a doctor, he was on a bunch of different boards and stuff like that. So he looked at everybody. I mean, he was so focused on finding this and make sure that it's true, that when it wasn't, I think it kind of destroyed him inside, because he had to find out that it just wasn't just some random death. Like, his parents weren't killed for nothing because of how important they were to him. Bruce tells Dick that he learned a lesson, not to get emotionally involved in a case. He needed there to be a court of owls, some great evil behind his parents' death. Dick reminds him that he was just a kid. And Bruce says, no, I've looked into them over the years, and still nothing. Dick isn't convinced. Batman has to excuse himself. He has a lead and heads to the sewers. So they're sitting there, and I really like these parts with Dick because it feels like Dick is probably the only one, maybe besides Alfred, but the only one that's close enough to him in age that he could talk to him about this stuff and say, dude, listen, dude, you were just a kid. There's no, you, like you said, you needed there to be this great evil. You had to have that. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. They could have outsmarted you. You're just a kid back then. And he's like, Bruce is just convinced, like, no way, no how. There's something else behind this. There's something else going on here. Someone is setting this up using people's fear of the Court of Owls to do something nefarious. This is not the actual Court of Owls. There never was one. On his way to the sewers, there's narration that Alan's bones had tiny holes in them, like he was stabbed many times over. 50 of them, in fact, likely by throwing knives. He also found a residue that doesn't match the granite of the sewer system. Batman is scraping something off the sewer wall, and boom, he is attacked. So Batman's scraping something off the wall, and then out of nowhere, you see the Talon eyes, and then wham, he gets taken out. He just gets taken out. It's insane, man. I mean, this Talon, something is up with this Talon because of the strength, because of just everything is heightened times a bazillion. And it's just, I've never seen a Batman foe right out the gate get the better of him this much. Like, just, it's crazy, man. So he's getting attacked, they're fighting, and while he's doing that, the panels get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and the Court of Owls rhyme is being shown all the way through the pages. It's really, really well done. It's very, very cool. And then the big reveal happens. Batman wakes up, there's a maze, and there's a big screen. On it is 3 people in owl masks, and they say, "Welcome, Batman, to the labyrinth." So this is where we're going to stop. Part 1. Oh, that was... Dude, this story gets so much better. I mean, this is one of those ones that I read, and I actually read it like 2 or 3 times, just this volume. And I read the second volume, The City of Owls, Night of Owls. And man, I really, really enjoyed this. This is great, guys. For a newer story, I believe it came out in 2012. So it might even get some sort of 10-year reprint because I know it's super popular. How I heard of it was because I wasn't reading comics at the time, but I told you I was watching a lot of the animated DC movies. Whatever one that was with Damian, because how they use this story is in the Talon tries to trick Damian into joining or, you know, being nice to him or whatever, and they were going to use Damian as the next Talon. And there's a reason why Talons are used that way. We'll get into it on the next episode of The Lapsed Comic Fan, but I can honestly say this is awesome. It's going to be coming up on 10 years in 2022. It'll be a 10-year anniversary. Hopefully there's some cool collector's edition. I know they have an omnibus of the New 52, Batman, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo. It would be really nice to get one volume that's all just the Court of Owls. I've seen there's volumes that you can get just this Court of Owls, the one that I have, with a Court of Owls mask. I'm thinking about picking it up just to have it. And just everything so far that I've read from this New 52 era of Batman has been fantastic. It's been great. I like this darker tone. I've always liked dark comics. Not just dark for the sake of being dark. There's an actual story here, a compelling story that I really liked. I thought it was well done. I thought the art was fantastic. I really thought it was great. And I so far, I give it a 5 out of 5, to be honest. I know there's probably some people who this has been out for 10 years and they're probably sick of it because of how popular it was. So they're like, oh, Court of Owls. I mean, it's good, but it's not like, you know, this. And that's how they work. Everything's cyclical, guys. Like, stuff that was good back then comes back around and people are like, oh, it's good again. And then something else is better. And then something else is better. I love it. It's a definite recommendation from me. And I'm going to get John to read this one and see what he thinks. And remember, guys, we're running this contest. Share this with everybody that you can. Let's try to get as many comments as we can. I'd love to get a bunch of people together and, have a great, awesome, big Batman discussion. Also, possibly, this is just possible, I've been reaching out to other comic book guys on Instagram. And there's shows out there on YouTube where multi-paneled live streams where they have a whole bunch of people talking about stuff that they say they're comics, but they are comics based, but they don't even talk about comics. They talk about like politics and stupid shit like that, which is sometimes you need to talk about, but I want to talk about comics. I'm going to try to get as many guys as I can. This won't be something that happens till like February or mid-February. I want to try to get a show together with a bunch of guys who are devoted to talking comics, and maybe once every 2 weeks we get together and we do a big live stream and we talk comics. We could talk about new stuff, old stuff, what you're reading now, how we got into comics. There's so many different topics that we can do as a show. And what I would love is once we get established and we start doing some shows, I would love there to be some fan interaction, like a fan or a subscriber interacts, says, hey, can you guys talk about this comic and give us the history of this? Or, hey, Steve, did you read this one? Because part of being a lapsed fan is surrounding myself with more knowledgeable people. And I would love to get some guys on here that are super knowledgeable and give me a history lesson in comics that I have not read or what has happened since I stopped reading. So that in the contest, guys, you get the Dark Knight Returns box set with mask and graphic novel and the 100 greatest Batman moments. So peace out. Next time, part 2 of Court of Owls. Oh, yeah. Check this out. My son got me this. My little 4-year-old got me this for Christmas. I love it. It's awesome.
I'm not dead!